Okay, Tyler Bridges, good morning. And I know you've been busy. You wrote a column, an article in the Washington Post. It was out this weekend, and two articles that I read uh, just the other day, or yesterday, the Advocate. The legislative session is coming to an end. Why don't you first tell us about the Washington Post article, and then why don't you go and tell us about the two articles that you wrote this weekend?
Sure, Steve. The piece that I wrote for the Washington Post, a freelance article, looks at where Bobby Jindal stands. About a little more than 2 weeks before he is going to announce his campaign for president. And congratulations to Jindal for having had such success in politics that he has gotten to the point where he can announce for president. I cannot think of anybody in Louisiana history who has mounted a serious candidate for president. And the problem that Jindal is facing, which is what I wrote about in the article for the Washington Post, is that he is very weak politically. He's probably at the weakest period that he's ever been. I identify in analyzing him, and I didn't have a chance to get into all this in the Washington Post article, but that he's had three low moments in his career. One was when he started out in 2003 was a political nobody, running for governor, but had the backing of Mike Foster. Second low point is after he lost that 2003 governor's race that he thought he was going to win. And then, of course, in 2004, he was elected to Congress. And the other low point, I think, was after his ridiculed 2009 State of the Union response to President Obama. So he's at a low point right now, and June 24th is the day that he announces for president. Then the other stories that I did was I covered the legislature on Saturday, and the Senate passed more tax measures, and that means that the House and the Senate have passed just about every budget and tax measure out there. The Senate will be passing the budget on Monday, and there's just several more days left in the legislative session, so it's going to be a final frenzied home stretch. And this is what I lay out in the article that I wrote for the Advocate, of trying to reach an overall deal on the budget that provides the dollars that everybody says that they want to prevent deep cuts to higher education and to public health care, while not prompting a veto from Governor Jindal. And then the third story I did was a single measure which would scale back the motion picture investor tax credit, the tax break that taxpayers give to film and television producers to do their movies and TV shows here in Louisiana.
How close are the House and the Senate in terms of, I guess, well, just in dollars? Are they far away?
Yeah, it's hard to know because the Senate on Saturday passed some tax measures with amendments, and exactly what were in those amendments is not clear. Everybody, I'd say generally, most legislators agree that they want to raise $750 to $850 million of new money by rolling back those tax breaks and by raising the cigarette tax. There are differences. The House seems not to want to go as high as the Senate in the cigarette tax increase. And there are fights back and forth. The House is much more willing to try to override a veto of Governor Jindal if it comes to that. And that's what I reported in the Sunday article for the Advocate. But all this will be revealed in the next, by Thursday, but a lot of this will be taking place behind public doors and secret negotiations.
Right. And so the House would be sending three and the Senate would be sending three, and it would be negotiations. And then the last day on Thursday, we would see how far we are to getting a budget deal and whether or not that deal would comport with the restraints that Jindal has imposed. Right,
and we may not even know for few days after Thursday what's the final shape of the budget, because it takes a while to sort this stuff out. And as I wrote a couple of weeks ago, or was it a week ago, ultimately they're going to pass a budget that only partially fixes the budget deficit they're facing. This budget will have a number of short-term fixes, and it's clear that the next governor and next legislature, who are elected by the people this fall, will inherit a fairly big budget deficit, and that this governor and this legislature will be behind.
Okay, and one last question. The SAFE account, that was the big controversy last week. That's of course, as you know, where with the bogus fee to university students, the tax credit for the purpose of giving Governor Jindal cover. My question is, any feel as to how that's going to go?
Yeah, just to and allow me to state it also, because it is confusing to people. The plan is to impose about a $1,500 fee on every student, part-time or full-time, at all of the state's public colleges and universities. There's about 220,000 students. So very rough numbers, that would raise $350 million. But the students would actually have to pay the fee. There would be a tax credit for the same amount, let's say $1,500. So students would not pay anything. The universities would not receive any extra money. The benefit of this from Jim's point of view is two. One is the fee is not a tax increase, and that's okay under the guidelines from Grover and Norquist, Americans for Tax Reform. The second is that the legislature, and I think Jindal the legislature to raise new revenue so there won't be deep cuts in public colleges and universities and health care. So you pay for that through tax increases or raising revenue. And that's against the rules of Americans for Tax Reform. But Americans Tax Reform allows tax increases if they're offset by tax decreases. And one of the ways to create a tax decrease is through the creation of a tax credit. So the SAVE fund that you mentioned, through this fee that the students would have to pay because of the creation of a tax credit, that tax credit, let's say it's $350 million, could be applied to offset $350 million of other revenue that the legislature is increasing, and that would allow Jindal then to swallow that extra revenue through the creation of this SAVE fund.
And the Senate has approved it, and the House is gathering their 85 or so names for a possible veto session. So
yeah, the SAVE fund was defeated in the House committee. It could pass the House. We don't know yet, but clearly there's a lot of resistance in the House, whereas the Senate has voted for it and is clearly in favor of the SAVE fund, which is something that Governor Jindal needs to be able to approve the tax measures that have gone through.
What a nightmare! Really interesting stuff. Okay, Tyler Bridges, thank you so much. Really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.